Using a bow drill in New Zealand is not commonly done, but on my 10-day survival challenge we had a crack at it using kaikatea as the wood for the bow drill. We failed to ignite our tinder bundle, but having reviewed the footage I could see why. The sparks were all blowing out the bottom of the bundle when I blew on it. So that's typical of using bow drills. There are lots of different potential problems. Everything has to line up and go to plan for it to work. Having said that, I think it's a great skill to have to fall back on if other means of lighting a fire fail. So today we're going to have another crack at it. I'm going to use the kaikatea again for both the half board and the spindle, and we'll see if we can't actually get a fire going. So before we start, we're going to have a look at my tinder first, and then I'll go through the components of the bow drill just as a bit of a refresher. So first, the tinder. I've got 3 types of tinder here today. I've got some dried flax seed heads, which are very paper-like. So I think what we'll do is we'll just rip these off and we'll try and make them into a bit of a tinder bundle. Should be nice and dry. And I can't stress how important it is to have your tinder, actually all parts of your bow drill need to be bone dry, and that's one of the problems in New Zealand, is getting things bone dry or finding things that are dry enough. You more than likely have to sit things out in the sun for a day or two to get things dry enough, and in a real situation when you need fire you can't afford to do that. So I'm just roughing this up a bit, breaking the fibres down, and I think that actually should be a pretty good little bundle. It's quite fine, it's quite dry, so we'll just put that aside for the time being. Next we have Toi Toi. Okay, this is one of my favourites, as you know, for lighting a fire with the ferro rod, and you can use it for lighting any fire really. A little bit of dried flour. This is from the previous year, so it's nice and bone dry. You find the new season flower head is just usually a bit green, but this last season's flower is usually nice and dry and fluffy. So I'll just rough that up again. And we might add to that some of the leaf. So that's the dry leaf. Crush that up, get it nice and fine. Pays to spend quite a bit of time getting your tinder, getting your firewood, getting your kindling, get it organised, get it handy, eliminate all the potential problems. Try and find a place to light your fire, firstly out of the weather, under a big tree, under the side of your shelter, ideally out of the wind if you can, because not only the moisture but the wind will affect the viability of any ember that you produce. So what we'll do is we'll mix that in with our seed head, make a little nest. Might work. Toi Toi. Next we have a bit of cabbage tree leaf. So a little bit more processing required here. We need to strip these leaves down into nice fine fibres. So I'm basically just splitting them up by hand as fine as I possibly can. You can use both ends. It's a bit stiffer that end, but this end here is a bit easier to break down. What I'll do is I'll process this a little bit, create a little tinder bundle, and I'll show you the end result. So it may take me a while. Well, I've broken down the cabbage tree fibre as small as I can. It's still quite coarse. I'd ignite that with a ferro rod, but I think we're going to struggle with a very, very small ember from the bow drill. So I think we'll put that aside. We'll try one of our other bundles first. Perhaps I'll try the flax seed head. We'll try that first and see how that goes. So we'll get set up. Actually, before I do that, we'll just run through the components of the bow drill very quickly again, just to refresh. So firstly, the half board, okay. This is a piece of kaikatea or New Zealand white pine. You can see here where I've previously attempted fires, and all I've done here is I've bored a little hole here with the tip of my knife just to start it, and we're going to do a burn-in process with our spindle just to get the shape of the spindle and the hole the same, so that when we attempt to light a fire we've got maximum friction contact. So there's our spindle. Okay, it's the same one I used in our 10-day challenge. It's getting a bit shorter, but I think it'll still work. One end's nice and pointy. That'll go into our bearing block, which I'm probably going to have to make because I haven't got one here. We'll do that in a minute. And this blunt end here will be the end that will hopefully generate an ember in our fireboard. Okay, so you can see I've actually cut a little groove in the middle of the spindle here. That was really just to help stop my bow drill. Here's my latest bow drill, just to stop the string sliding up and down once it's loaded. Okay, it just eliminates. Sometimes the string will slide up or down depending on how you hold the drill, so it just helps eliminate that. So speaking of the bow that's it there, I've just made this one actually because my other one wasn't really going to cut the mustard. It's just a slightly curved bit of wood. It's fairly stiff. It's got a little bit of flex just to which makes it a little bit easier getting the string at the right tension. You'll notice the string is quite loose. That's because we want it a little bit loose so we can fit the spindle. So one end I've just tied I've made a little groove around the bow. Yeah, I've made a little slip knot. And the other end I've actually just made a little slit in the end of it. Put the string through and tied a knot in the end with a little half hitch, just so it's easy to adjust if I want to adjust the tension. And when we load the bow, I remember I showed this to you once before, I use the pointy end first. That's the end that goes in the bearing block. I'll poke it through the bow from my side and twist it back towards me. Lock it in place like that. You want to be careful you don't let it go and it'll fling up and get you in the nose. So, and ideally once it's loaded, you'll notice how the spindle will travel along the outside of the string. So that'll give you maximum stroke when you're working the drill and your spindle's not contacting your bow. So you want maximum stroke length. Also, with a bow like this, you can control the tension with your hand. Okay, if you find the string slipping a bit on the spindle, just grab it in here, tighten it up like that. So that's that part of it. What I'm going to do now is go and find a little piece of wood to cut as a bearing block. Okay, this is just a little bit of green wood I've cut to fit in the palm of my hand like that. and I've bored a little hole in there with the tip of my knife. The bearing block will go into there, and we'll slowly work a hole into that as we do the burn-in process. So once we've got a bit of a hole in there, I'm going to put a bit of green leaf in there, just as a little bit of lubricant. This is actually a bit of burdock that I found, so I'm just bruising that up a bit. Make a bit of a lube. Now if I had some animal fat or dead snail or something like that, anything that's going to give you a little bit of lubricant would work. If you're around the coast, of course, you could use a shell or even a rock or shell with a bit of a hole in it, or something that's got a hollow concave. That would work fine. I think this should work as well. So anyway, I'm going to get set up now and we'll complete the burn-in process, get the shape of our spindle fitted to the hearth board, and then we'll have a crack at the fire. So just loading the spindle. Remember, we're not trying to light fire right at the moment, we're just getting the shape of our hole sorted. So just to start off nice and slow. Till we get things warmed up a bit. Okay, it's getting there. See how the string was actually slipping a bit there? So, just going to tension it up with my hand a little bit. Nice and slow. Just getting the shape of that hole sorted out. Try and get long strokes if you can. You're actually getting a little bit of smoke there, creating a little bit of powder. That's what we want when we're going to light the fire. Okay, see how that's creating a little bit of a burn in there. So that's good. It's actually, the bearing block's actually working quite well. I'll make a slightly bigger hole in there. It's actually quite greenish bit of wood, so there's good moisture content in it. I'll reposition myself a little bit. Pays to be comfortable. I'm going to make that hole a little bit bigger before I cut the notch. Okay, now that powder that we've generated on the board there, see that little bit of black powder around the edge of the hole? We're going to try and retain that because we can use it. So I might just tip it off onto something. That aside. Now I'm going to cut a notch as I've done with these other ones. Only needs to be about 1/8 the size of the hole. So just in the edge of the hole, so when we are creating that black powder with our drill, it'll actually fall down through the slot onto an ash tray, which we haven't got an ash tray, but sometimes I use a leaf or a bit of bark just to catch the ash. I'm actually going to try something slightly different this time. I'm going to put the tinder bundle directly under the slot, and we'll see if we can't get that ember straight into the tinder bundle. No mucking around. Let's see what happens. Okay, you can see there I've made a little notch. So now we will get our bundle in position. So our tinder bundle, with it nice and condensed, we'll get it directly underneath our notch. Everything's organised, our tinder's here, our kindling's just there. Get our body position right. You got your knee, you want to be able to lock the spindle in here so your weight's coming directly down on top of your leg, not this. So lock it in against your leg so it's not flying all over the place when you're working the drill. Okay, that's quite important. So let's have a go at this, eh? Lock and load. Nice and slow. Nice long strokes. As the wood heats up, you'll hear a noise change. Faster and faster. Seeing a bit of smoke. Oh, let's see if we've got an ember. Oh. Very close. Oh, I think it was probably a mistake, maybe putting that the tinder bundle directly under there. I don't think the ember could breathe well enough. So I'll go back to the old tried and tested method of using a piece of bark or a leaf underneath. See if we can't. We nearly had an ember. It was smoking beautifully, so we'll give it another crack a slightly different way. Okay, here we go again. Using the same hole. Warming it up again. Holy mackerel. We've got a little ember there. Right, Let's see if we can get our ember transferred. No rush to this process. Take it nice and steady. Catch your breath. Come on, baby. Very close. There we go. Woohoo! We have fire. Well, there we have it. Fire by bow drill. I'm just going to let that dry out now. As you see, it's not an easy process, but if you get all the components and your process and your technique sorted, it can work. So that's bow drill using kahikatea. I have done it also with horopito, mahoe, and there are other woods as well. Non-native woods, of course, pine works well. And as I said before, if you're learning the process, get an old pine pellet, cut the end off a broom handle, and pine works really well. Also things like poplar, willow, worth a crack. Anything as long as it's bone dry and it's not too hard. So the rollers should be able to indent the wood with your fingernail a little bit. And when you're working the drill, you need to be creating that nice fine black powder. If you're not doing that, something's not right. So go and have a crack at it, study it up on YouTube. It's a good backup if your other firelighting methods fail. And if nothing else, you can show off to your mates. You know, I bet they haven't done it, so go and have a crack at it. That's awesome. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.